All right, Johnetta, it's all you.
All right. Hello. Good day and good morning, and welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. My name is Johnetta, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to the Unity of Fredericksburg weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. For those of you watching on YouTube, live or later, be sure to say hi in the chat thread. Like this video and subscribe to the Unity of Fredericksburg YouTube channel. If you are able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Send an email to info@uofva.org to receive the Zoom link. And for everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter at uofva.org for all the details. Our message today comes from Minister Reverend Fair. And now, here's Reverend Fair.
Thank you, Johnetta, and hello, everyone. Today, we are concluding our three-part series on prosperity consciousness. So at the beginning of July, on July 2nd, we talked about abundance and realizing that the abundance that we sense in the universe, in that which we call God, is actually something that we know and understand in our individual lives. We talked about the unlimited capacity we have for love, for the energy of life that is resurging in the earth around us all the time. And we talked about how it's so important for us to roll this awareness of abundance into all aspects of our lives. And then last week on July the 16th, we talked about gratitude, practicing gratitude to turn our focus to divine nature in all things. And what this practice of gratitude does is help us address those gaps where we sense that abundance when it comes to love, but we're not really sensing it when it comes to our money. Well, having a gratitude practice can help us fill in those gaps and train our brains to look for the good and be grateful for all the good that we know is there, even before we can see it. And gratitude itself helps us improve our experience across the board and makes our experience of the good last longer. So today we're here for part 3, and I'm calling part 3, You Are, I Am, We Are the Flow. So those of you who follow Unity of Fredericksburg online and receive our newsletter will have seen an image of a fountain for today's message. And if you looked online out on our calendar of what's coming up, the image associated with this talk today was a fountain. A fountain is actually a very popular image in Unity overall. Those of you who are familiar with Unity World Headquarters, Unity Worldwide Ministries, the logo that we use for Unity of Fredericksburg is actually a picture of a fountain. It's an image of the fountain. And the home of Unity, which is Unity Village outside of Kansas City, Missouri, has one of the largest installations of fountains in the entire state of Missouri. And I'm sure it compares well to all, it's gorgeous. Let me just put it that way. So this fountain image is really powerful, and it really goes back to the foundation of Unity teachings too. So I'm going to read to you from Lessons in Truth, which is one of my favorite sources for the foundational Unity teachings. This is written by Dr. Emily Cady, and let me just read this to you. Imagine, if you will, a great reservoir out of which lead innumerable small channels. At its farthest end, each channel opens out into a small fountain. This fountain is not only being continually filled and replenished from the reservoir, but it itself is a radiating center, whence it gives out in all directions that with it which it receives, so that all who come within its radius are refreshed and blessed. This is our relation to God. Each one of us is a radiating center. Each one, no matter how small or ignorant, is the little fountain at the far end of a channel, the other end of which leads out from all there is in God. So we're talking about how each one of us is a radiating center of good, a radiating center of that one presence and that one power which is expressing at the point of us, each individual. So we might hear some common phrases about being in the flow. And when we say it that way, in Unity, we can get a little picky about words sometimes because we want our wording to really reflect our belief system. So we might talk about being in the flow, and that kind of says like the good is outside us somewhere, and that maybe if we're good, we can step into it. But this fountain image reveals to us that as a fountain, we are expressing the beingness of God. We are the flow. The universe is filled with fountains, just like us, living creatures, and each and every one of us is responsible for the flow of good from our own consciousness. Think about that, my friends. It's kind of an astounding privilege and responsibility. You get to choose how the goodness of the universe is flowing from the basis of your consciousness, from your corner of the world. So our question this morning is, how are you doing at that? What quality are you bringing to the flow of good in your world? Now, this flow, this fountain image, this is always happening. You can't not be in it. So it can't not happen. You can't step outside of that. This is what is happening all the time, is what we call divine law. It's kind of explaining to us how things are operating in the universe. Each and every one of us is an operator of the flow of good. So the question is, how are you handling that flow? And how is it that we can improve in those areas where we're not flowing so great? We're flowing pretty good over here, but not so much over there. Sometimes if we are kind of sleepwalking our way through lives and not taking the time to reflect and pay attention, we might just be operating on old rules that are in our consciousness from our family of origin, from old teachers or whatever. So if we're not paying attention, we might be functioning on rules such as something you learned as a child, like money doesn't grow on trees. Well, if you're carrying around that belief, how does that affect your flow of good? Something to think about. Here's another example. Here's an old adage that a lot of people who have kind of a skeptical view on life will believe. It's called Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Have you ever been in the moment where you believe that, or you're around someone else who believes that and is always looking for the next shoe to drop? Well, how does that affect the flow of good? So both of these are reminders that our brains give us. These beliefs are things that our brains hold on to try to protect us from loss or fearful situations. And we can be carrying those around with us even when we don't realize it. So I'm here to remind us this morning that there, of course, are better inspirations to look to when it comes to how we are minding our own consciousness. And in Unity, everything that we talk about is really based on the teachings of Jesus. So for those of you who resonate with the Bible, who resonate with the Christian belief system, I'm going to be referring to that today. In particular, I'm looking at the teachings of Jesus from Luke 6:38. And it's short and simple, like a lot of his teachings were. He says, give, and it will be given unto you. So think about how you handle your flow. And notice, Jesus is not saying, hide your stuff away in case something bad happens, right? Jesus is not saying, hold on to your stuff and see how it goes, is he? He's saying, give. Give, and it will be given unto you. Now, notice in this simple equation that the word give comes first. And that's because there actually is a correct order to the divine law that's at work with this process of prosperity consciousness that we're talking about. So also notice, Jesus does not say, wait until you see everything that you have received and then calculate out a certain percentage and then give. He doesn't say that, does he? And there are some very common practices and even practices that have been taught in previous decades that teach us to do that in some way. You know, check all your income, then calculate, then give. What Jesus says is give, and give first. So to paraphrase the words of Eric Butterworth, who was a very well-known 20th century Unity minister, in his book, Spiritual Economics, and I'm paraphrasing right now. I have some quotes later, some direct quotes, but I'm paraphrasing. He says, when you're stuck, whatever area of your life where you're stuck, something's got to give. And the way to get unstuck is to give in some way. We know there are lots of different ways to give. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But right now, rather than being stuck in these old beliefs that we've been talking about, like Murphy's Law and things like that, this month we have been all about developing our consciousness, developing an abundance consciousness, a gratitude consciousness, a true prosperity consciousness, so that the foundations of our consciousness reflect the truth of our divine nature, not our outer circumstances. So when we work to create practices in our lives that are based on these truths of abundance and gratitude, then we can have our lives start reflecting the truth of our divine nature and not limited by the places in our lives where our brain sees not enough. And our brain says, well, it always happens this way, that kind of thing. So here's a quote, another quote from Eric Butterworth, a direct quote. Jesus was stressing the need to get into a giving consciousness in order to sustain the flow of good in your life. And we are sustaining our good by referencing that which we call God in all of our affairs, not just in certain times. So let's think again about this image of the fountain. Now, being the flow of the fountain is all about circulation, right? So that's about giving and receiving. And remember what Jesus said, give and it will be given unto you. So the first step is give. And the second step is to receive. Another quote from Eric Butterworth, the divine flow requires but one thing of you, your consent to be a receiving channel. So when you look out at your world, do you see a wealth of wonders there for you to receive? If not, how can you improve your outlook? Well, we've been talking this month about some practices where you can do that, right? How about a gratitude practice to train your brain to see all the goodies out there in the world? Here's an affirmation that I found at unity.org. Celebrating unexpected blessings, I live well today. Let me say that for you again. Celebrating unexpected blessings, I live well today. And just a little reminder that the abundance of those blessings are to be found within consciousness, within that awareness of God, of the benevolent and universe that we align ourselves with. When it comes to receiving, have you ever felt yourself not worthy or not deserving? If so, what can you do to improve your mindset? How about an affirmation to remind yourself that you are divine and wonderful and worthy? So I went on unity.org, found myself an affirmation, and here it is. I am worthy. I am a worthy and beloved expression of divine love. Let me say it again because I fumbled it the first time. I am a worthy and beloved expression of divine love. And that awareness that we're talking about, where do we find it? We find it within. We find it in our divine nature, not outside with our neighbors or on the news or anything like that, because we're working on referencing absolute truth, not the things that we find out in the outer world. So if you've tried all these things and you're still not experiencing prosperity in your life, then something is still blocking the flow, right? As mentioned earlier, this is very often thoughts, beliefs, habits that we have that we haven't recognized yet. So we can keep working on things like affirmations and releases to work on that. This takes time, my friends. So be gentle with yourself, be gentle. And notice that sometimes our flow is blocked because we are holding back the flow in our lives. So if we are holding back the flow of good, and in any area of our lives, we are blocking, we're limiting our own experience of prosperity, because prosperity is the flow of good in all the areas of our lives. So in relationships, we can be holding back on forgiveness. When we're holding back on forgiveness of ourselves or others, we're blocking the flow of good. All right. And that can show up in other areas of our lives, not just in that corner of relationship. You see how when we're talking about this flow, this constant flow, if you're holding back in one area, you are affecting the flow of your whole, experience of prosperity, right? You can't just kind of keep it over in one corner. Let's say you're holding back on participating. All right, you're fearful about being hurt or being left out or these kinds of things. That's another way in which if you're holding back on fully participating in life, then you can be blocking that flow of good. You can be holding back on taking action. So there are a lot of things that our brains will tell us, well, you have to wait for the right time. You have to wait to have enough money. You have to before you take action, for example. And this is a way of holding back and blocking the flow of good. We can be holding back because our giving is transactional. So, for example, have you ever noticed or found yourself giving because of what you expect to receive in return. Sometimes that can be the regard of someone else, a special favor, that kind of thing. Sometimes that you might have been in an older prosperity course that was really focused on getting stuff, getting a new car, getting this, getting that. And your practice of giving is tied to what you're going to get. And in that case, it's not actually giving, right? It's a transaction. You're giving so that you can get something. So if you find yourself in that kind of a mindset, that's something that you need to work on correcting, because giving and being the flow is a joyful and authentic experience. So working through anything that you might have that's blocking that flow of good is going to help you with your overall experience of goodness in life. Here's another quote from Eric Butterworth. Developing prosperity consciousness involves going the second mile in meeting obligations, turning the other cheek in relationships, and forgiving until 70 times 7. It means diligence in holding the high watch of positive thinking and loving reactions in overcoming the world of tribulations. So there is infinite joy in what we're talking about today, in being in that awareness of being the flow of good. And each and every one of us gets to choose how we will guide that flow of good in our lives. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that wonderful? So when you pay your bills, do it with love and intention. You have received all of these wonderful things. You are able to provide for yourself in this way. When you do your giving, do it with joy and encouragement. And remember that there are many ways to give, right? We can give our time. We can give our attention, our love, our assistance, our devotion, our hospitality. And yes, we can give financially. One last quote from Eric Butterworth as we wind up this talk about being the flow of good in this world and in our lives. And then we'll go into meditation. So this again is from Eric Butterworth from Spiritual Economics. Give of your substance graciously, wisely, and without thought of return. Think not of what you are giving to, rather think of what you are giving from, and thus feel humble and realizing that you are being the divine flow. So right now, we are going to move into a time of meditation. So I encourage you to take a deep breath and kind of settle into your seat. Let's sort of quiet the mind, open the heart space, bring our awareness into the body, and depending on how you are relaxed in this moment right now, feel your feet resting on the floor or your legs resting on wherever it is that you are seated or reclining, and just feel that energy of the earth moving up as a blessing through the body. Feel that wonderful foundation, that wonderful groundedness that goes from your feet all the way up to the top of your head, the tips of your fingers. Move your focus to the heart space. And in this sacred space of divine love, feel the flow of good from source that you are. Consider again that image of a fountain and that image of a great reservoir that Emily Cady presents to us as an image for that which we call God or the universe, and all of the channels that are expressing outward from that center of divine mind. And each one of us is the fountain at the end of one of those channels. We are an agent of the flow of good. Through this flow, we are connected with all other living beings, and we are participating in the flow of good inward and outward on a continual basis. So let's just take that image, that feeling, that awareness, and move into the time of stillness together right now. As we begin to bring our awareness back to the current moment, to the flow of our breath in and out, let's reflect on what a joy it is to participate in this flow of good. What a joy it is to feel the flow of that energy of source from our divine nature, from each other, from the earth itself. What a joy it is to participate in this flow of goodness in the community of the universe. And let's close our meditation time together with an affirmation. I like to put my hand on my heart. Here it is, my friends, and then you can repeat it after me. I guide the flow of good in my life with divine love, and I am grateful. Here it is again. I guide the flow of good in my life with divine love, and I am grateful. One more time. I guide the flow of good in my life with divine love, and I am grateful. So it is, my friends. Thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future. And now I'm going to turn it back over to our service leader, Janetta. So Janetta, I invite you to turn on your camera and your microphone.
Okay. Thank you very much, Reverend Fair. Thank you all for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website, uofva.org, to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation, and support our ministry with your financial donation. Thanks again for watching, and see you the next time. God bless.